Well, William Samoei Arap Ruto is officially Kenya's 5th Commander-in-Chief of the Defense Forces and President of the Republic after taking oath of office. Ruto's swearing-in was administered by the Chief Registrar Anna Madi before Chief Justice Martha Koome. Retired President Uhuru Kenyatta, along the CDF General Robert Kibochi, handed over the instruments of power. Leila Mohammed brings us the highlights of the military and judicial rites that characterized the change of guard ceremony.
In under 10 seconds, Brigadier Timothy Lekolol had swiftly changed positions from his outgoing Commander-in-Chief to the new Commander-in-Charge of the Kenya Defense Forces and President William Samoei Arap Ruto.
Ukipenda presidential ceremonial sword.
The exiting 4th Commander-in-Chief then went ahead to hand over the ceremonial sword, indicating the CNC's command to President William Ruto, who then went ahead to hand it to his ADC as the Chief of Defense Forces, General Robert Kibochi, saluted the new Commander-in-Chief in respect.
Now being escorted.
The country's 5th commander was thereafter ushered to the main stage, where the KDF band played the 3 stanzas of the national anthem in respect of their new Commander-in-Chief. A few steps away, 2 military police soldiers stood side by side, one to lower Uhuru Kenyatta's dark blue standard that has been the symbol of his presidency in the last 9 years, flying high in every venue he was present, and also side by side with the Kenyan flag on his presidential limousine. As one era ended, a new one began, full of the brightness of the yellow sun. President William Ruto's yellow standard was raised simultaneously as Uhuru Kenyatta's came down. Just like those who came before him, the spears crossing in the background of the shield was the center focus. Ruto's symbol of the wheelbarrow making it to the right side of a flag that will define his leadership in life and even in the rites after his passing. A 21-gun salute to honor the new Commander-in-Chief was administered by the Kenya Navy, meters away from here, using cannons. Whilst this was happening, all uniformed officers saluted in respect as William Ruto stood silent, taking in the moment as those in the stadium watched in excitement and awe. As the last rites to their now retired Commander-in-Chief, the military police folded Uhuru Kenyatta's standard, placing it in a special wooden box before it was handed to Lieutenant Colonel Frederick Mutugi, the commanding officer of the 2nd Military Police Battalion, who marched slowly handing it to the Chief of Defense Forces,
Tumpe makofi Mheshimiwa Rais anapopokea bendera hii.
General Robert Kibochi, who handed it to Uhuru Kenyatta as a memento that he will carry with his copy of the Constitution he swore to protect in 2013 and his CNC's sword.
May I have your permission to march off the guard of honor, sir?
As his first command to the Kenya Defense Forces, President William Ruto granted permission requested from the parade commander, Lieutenant Colonel Gilbert Kinanga, to march out of the stadium after a ceremony that was full of pomp and color.
Shoulders, arms!
The band led the way as the 160-man parade, constituting of the red tunic ceremonial dress of the Kenya Army, the dark blue #1 dress of the Kenya Air Force, and the whites of the Kenya Navy, marched in honor of their new Commander-in-Chief, saluting him as they passed the podium where he stood. But before all the rites and ceremonies took place, the awaited Commander-in-Chief arrived at the Kasarani Stadium just before noon Tuesday and took his position on the podium, awaiting the outgoing Commander-in-Chief to drive in and set the ball rolling for handing over the instruments of power. His predecessor, former boss and the country's 4th Commander-in-Chief, arriving in the presidential limousine just after 12:30 p.m. and boarding the Commander-in-Chief's open-top Land Cruiser with his ADC Brigadier Lekolol standing behind him and the Chief of Defense Forces General Robert Kibochi standing by his side.
Mheshimiwa Uhuru Kenyatta.
Once inside the stadium, the exiting Commander-in-Chief did not make the traditional lap of honor around the stadium, alighting just before the presidential dais placed before the parade of the Kenya Defense Forces mounted in his honor. For one last time, the parade commander Lieutenant Colonel Gilbert Kinanga requested the 4th Commander-in-Chief to inspect his last guard of honor, which he did with the ADC and the CDF marching with him through the parade, stopping to salute the flag of the 21st Battalion Kenya Rifles of the Kenya Army that took the lead in the parade on this day of the change in guard.
Swearing-in ceremony of the President-elect.
Once back on the podium, it was the time of the judiciary to take their place on the dais. The judicial mace was brought in by judicial officers to signify that a judicial process would be able to take place. Chief Justice Martha Koome introduced to the public the President-elect William Ruto before the Registrar of the Judiciary Anne Amadi stepped forward to administer the first oath of affirmation of allegiance to the Constitution.
I, William Samoei Ruto.
With that done, the Registrar administered the second oath of due execution of office of the President.
In full realization
of the high calling.
He concluded with the signing of the certificate of inauguration.
The Chief Justice has appended her signature.
The Chief Justice, who witnessed the ceremony, finally introduced to the nation the country's 5th Commander-in-Chief. Leila Mohammed, NTV.